All right, we're gonna get going here in just a minute or two. I'm gonna get going a little bit late. I was a little late on getting some reminders out this evening. So hopefully bear with me here. I don't see my mic working. Oh, okay, I see it working over there. Hopefully it's working properly. All right, it looks like we got Shane joined in. Looks like another connection's struggling, or my connection's struggling. It shows you're still trying to join on a second ID, Shane. Bear with me for a minute. I don't know if you heard a few minutes ago, I mentioned we're going to start a little bit late tonight. I was a little bit late getting some reminders out this evening. I'm going to try and give this another minute, and then we'll get going. Hey Shane, how are you?
Doing all right, man. Just us tonight.
Things seem to be going about as well as can be expected.
Thank you. And I went to the Cannabis Activist Boot Camp either last Saturday or the Saturday before. I really enjoyed
that one that Americans for Prosperity put on in Columbia.
Yes, sir.
Cool, and it was good information.
Oh yeah, Senator Tom Davis was there. I'm about to do a video this weekend talking about the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act. I'm gonna clean up, take my bandanas off, do it in a nice location. One thing, I got to start thinking about the broader audience I'm trying to reach instead of just the people that know me personally. Mm-hmm. So I'll reach a broader audience cleaned up.
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, many wouldn't know it to look at me today at my age now, but a lot of my youth I spent with my hair about as long as to where I would cut it when I would sit on it too much. So probably from about like 17 to 20, actually to about 28, 29, something like that. My hair was generally about belt length for a long, long time. And then one day I cut it and it's been kind of easy to manage ever since. I'm getting some connection freeze here and there. I don't know if it's on my end, but just to let you know, I am seeing some connection freeze. No. Okay, I'm kind of seeing Josh move again. I can't hear him as I don't know he's speaking. Anyway, it looks like we got a couple other folks joining with us tonight. Hi, Josh. Hi, Joey. It is, just turned 7:09. As I was telling Shane, we're going to start a little early, start a little late tonight. I was a little late on getting the reminders out on, I usually try and send some reminders out to some of our followers. But let's get going. All right. My name is Scott Weldon. I am the Executive Director of the South Carolina chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, lovingly known as NORML. Why did that file not open? All of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. There we go. And I can close that little document back up. Welcome to everybody who's here with me on the call, on the Zoom call right now. Welcome to anybody who may be watching this on our live stream on YouTube. Also welcome to anybody who's watching it as a recording later on YouTube. Mentioning YouTube, I always like to point out that we are not monitoring the comment section of our YouTube stream. So we won't be responding. If you do have anything to chip in there, leave it down to the comment section, any of your comments, questions, or concerns. And in about 24 to 48 hours, when YouTube's done rendering the video, we can kind of go back in and we will try and address your questions, comments, or concerns at that time. So again, thank you everybody for welcoming, for joining the South Carolina Cannabis Conversation tonight. We are going to talk a little bit about what's going on at national level. Pretty much the agenda that we had scheduled for last week. When my internet connection quit. As per the course usually for me, right about 10 of 8 or so, as we would be wrapping up a meeting, my internet came back. So sorry about that. Any inconvenience that may have had for anybody who was trying to log on with us last week. It was our local provider, as far as I know. Many times it's an accident in the neighborhood or something like that that knocks out some of the service. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about federal policy tonight. And really the big things kind of going on federal policy that we like to talk about. First off is appropriations. Woohoo, appropriations. There is, and this has been going on over and over and over again for a number of years. The book name is slightly changed. I'll share the link down here in our chat. But basically what the appropriations bill contains is the Blumenauer-McClintock-Norton-Lee Amendment. The Norton-Lee, I think, are newer co-sponsors on the newer version of the bill. But the Blumenauer-McClintock Amendment has kind of been renewed year after year, but it is one of those things that does need to be renewed. And what that basically is it doesn't allow the tax dollars to be used to enforce federal marijuana laws in legal states.
What happened?
Look, I think his internet might have went down.
So I guess we get to hijack the meeting then.
I heard something, I read something today about the MORE Act, talking about how there's still going to be, I think it's either $10,000 and 5 years in prison if you get caught with marijuana that hasn't had a tax paid on it, or vice versa. But there's still going to be some tricky laws that could potentially land some people in jail. Anybody else anything about that?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't think it's right. They're trying to legalize it, but at the same time, they're creating new laws to where they can still arrest you for it. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
All right, give me a minute here to try and reconnect this to our live. Oh, it looks like our live stream's still going. Cool. Reopen chat, reopen my participant window. Closed a whole nother browser on me. I have gotten, sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that. Everything quit. My machine locked up. I've been having that issue. Actually, this machine's been having this issue for years. It's a new machine to me, but not a new machine. I need to reopen a couple of tabs here. All right. Let me get back to this. Sorry about that. I reshared that link that we were talking about. I'm not exactly sure where things locked up and where it stopped recording. We were talking about the appropriations and the Blumenauer McClintock Norton Lee amendment. That has been a rider on the on this legislation since about 2014, I believe. Anyway, it has to be renewed. It has been renewed every year. And again, if I got cut off before I said this earlier, what this legislation basically does, it prevents federal tax dollars from being spent to enforce federal marijuana law in legalized states. Okay. I'm gonna just put it out there real quick. Can everybody hear me? Anybody hear me? Give me a yeah. Up. Shane says he can hear me. That's good. All right. Any questions at all about the Blumenauer McClintock Norton Lee amendment? Again, that's pretty standard legislation, gets renewed each year. The one I do want to kind of talk about, I'll talk about next, and that is the MORE Act. And that is not COA, that is not the Cannabis Opportunity and Administration and Opportunity Act, which is the Senate version, which used to be the MORE Act in the Senate. We talked about that not too long ago, and my thought was, and our conversation on that was that COA had a legislative draft proposed. That was back in, I want to say July. They left it open for comment period which ended September 1st. That comment period has ended, and now it's my understanding the legislators are working to modify that legislation before actually introducing it into the Senate. And it could be old news by now. I haven't been in contact with Justin Streckel, our political director at National, but he was in the process of trying to schedule a meeting to talk about normal suggestions and how to incorporate them into this legislation. So to kind of roll back on that, the MORE Act is the House version of that Senate bill of the COA, and that was reintroduced earlier this year, and it just kind of wasn't. I didn't expect it to really be going anywhere. The one I really expected to pick up steam and get moving was COA. But that's been kind of slow to kind of hit the ground. We were actually expecting the draft to hit probably around April. We always love when we get good legislative news around 420 type thing. But it was a couple months after that. Like I say, I believe it was July 1st or thereabouts when COA's draft was announced. And again, the final legislation is still being written. It surprised me when I heard that the MORE Act was going to see a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee. And I believe it was scheduled. I shared 2 links on it in 2 different days for the Senate, for the House hearings on that, for the Judiciary Committee hearings led by Chairman Ralph Nadler. And I didn't watch the first day. And thankfully, just relatively as it was starting, one of our supporters here, Joey, messaged me and says, "Hey, are you listening to this?" So I quick jumped on and started listening. I do have a tendency to pause it every now and again and wander off and get a drink or something, but so I may lapse on when it's actually live and things like that. And one of the things Joey had mentioned was, take your blood pressure medication. And boy, wasn't he right on that. If you ever sit and listen to congressional hearings, it's not a whole lot different than listening to the Supreme Court hearings and stuff like that, which are some things I'm doing lately. But oh my gosh, some of the opposition is frustrating as heck. They try to get some amendment about mask banning or not banning or something to attach to it, and that was thankfully turned down and shut down. But they went on and on about this mask thing for a while. Come on, folks, let's just move this marijuana legislation forward. But that's a lot of times how things do get done in our legislative process, is amendments get added, and they're not always necessarily directly connected. And we'll be talking about that in a few minutes on something else. But at the end of the day, and I think I sat and listened to this thing for, Joey, I don't know if you remember, 3 or 4 hours. It seemed like until they finally got to the vote. And the funny thing is that at first I missed it. I had to come back and go, hold it, wait, what are they talking about this now? And I had to jump back a little bit. It must have been a little sidetracked. And it got voted out of the House Judiciary Committee to the House floor. And like I say, I haven't heard anything about it since that point. And that was back on Wednesday, September 29th. So that was about a week ago, last Wednesday. maybe that's what took my internet out. No. Thankfully, my internet was running good through the afternoon, so I could sit and listen to that, because it is really kind of interesting to listen to our legislators and some of the stuff they talk about while they're supposed to be talking about protecting the rights of the citizens of this nation. Anyway, the House version, the MORE Act, which is a bill to deschedule marijuana at the federal level, also creates pathways for ownership opportunities in the emerging regulated industry, facilitates expungement at low-level federal marijuana convictions. And when I say that, it is federal marijuana convictions. So I think less than 10%, maybe even closer to 5% of marijuana arrests are federal. Most of them are state and local type things. There does, I believe it's in this one, but I'm pretty sure it's in COA, funding to local district attorneys to facilitate expungement at the local level, which would generally be at most, like county district attorney levels. Also allows veterans for the first time to obtain medical cannabis recommendations from the VA. Again, that's in the House version of the MORE Act. And removing the threat of deportation for immigrants accused of minor marijuana infractions, and providing critical reinvestment grant opportunities for communities that have suffered disproportionate rates of marijuana-related enforcement, and protecting and respecting basic rights and civil liberties of cannabis consumers under federal law when it comes to public benefits, i.e. public housing, student loans. You'll hear me go off on these things all the time. Protecting those rights for cannabis consumers. That was reintroduced as HR 3617. Again, basically, like we have the House and the Senate version of the Compassionate Care Act here in South Carolina. As most of us know, the Senate version sponsored by Senator from Beaufort County, Tom Davis. There is also a House version of the Compassionate Care Act, very similar to Senator Davis's, except it includes the sale and smoking of marijuana flower, where Tom Davis's bill does not include that. Neither of the bills include home grow, those state bills. But anyway, similarly to that, the MORE Act and COA are basically companion legislation. We see the House version moving forward here at the federal level right now. And again, we do expect the Senate version, once it hits the floor, or once it hits the ground, to hit the ground running, we hope. I want to roll that back just a little bit, because of course I was watching a little bit on the news tonight about this other legislation trying to move forward, the reconstruction legislation, the debt ceiling stuff. As I've heard, Justin say quite often, it's that kind of stuff that sucks the air out of the room, and this other legislation just can't breathe until this stuff gets taken care of. But that doesn't mean that we have to, lose sight of our goals, just because right now things are sort of on hold, we'll call it. And that's why I share these links in here with you. I am going to share one more here, and this is about this MORE Act, House version. This is where, again, you contact your House of Representative members and you ask them, move this federal legislation forward. Unfortunately, who do we have in the House here? Nancy Mace. Actually, Nancy supports medical. Last I saw her, and I saw her, she had me talking to one of her aides a little bit. I believe she is not signed on with this because it's not Republican sponsored legislation, but I almost want to say I believe she favors decriminalization as well. I don't want to say that with 100% definitivity, but I don't think she's like for adult recreational use at this point. That's just my feel for it, and that's not anything specifically said. She said, but that would be my House member here. And I'm not sure who your House member is. So when you go in and you follow this link that I just shared with you through normal, you'll fill in your address. That will tell you who your House member is, and send them a little letter asking them to support this legislation and move it forward. Because the next step here, folks, is a vote on the House floor. And if it gets voted through on the House, it goes over to the Senate. Our hope is, somewhere along the way, the Senate bill gets moving, the COA Act gets moving, and they sort of end up colliding and merging and whatever it takes to get us the best legislation we can get at this point. Amazing to me though. I'm going to kind of roll back to watching that Senate, the House Judiciary Committee debate, listening to cannabis legislation actually be discussed and moved forward, not prohibition legislation, decriminalization, descheduling legislation actually being discussed on the in Congress. Mind blowing. I mean, I'm a little old. Normal's been at this 50 years. I haven't been with them that long, but we've been at it 5 here in South Carolina since I've been in South Carolina. 50 years. And I didn't think I'd be seeing it blossom the way it has especially the past 5 years, but especially a lot over the past 10 years. And support is just, it seems like every state that legalizes, whether it's for medical and or recreational use, it just seems to keep gaining more support. People who had been against it all of a sudden find out that, oh, geez, this isn't happening as horribly as I was told, the propaganda that was given to me. Oh, this isn't a horrible product. This is kind of nice. They'll try it. Oh, it's safer than the opioids my doctor's giving you. Whatever their reasons are, people are supporting it more and more and more. I think the last numbers I saw, voters are like 90% in support of this legislation. Where is our legislators? Anyway, that is the MORE Act, House version MORE Act. That was the second thing I wanted to talk about tonight. Third thing I wanted to talk about tonight was COA, and I already did kind of talk about that a little bit. I will share this link up with you. The Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. Again, here's where you'll write to your senators. Here in South Carolina, who do we got? Kim Scott and Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham. I've heard him as being quoted as being one of the three horsemen of the apocalypse against cannabis legalization. Write to Lindsey. See if we can change his thinking. But yes, this is what I've always called for the longest time, the Booker Wyden Schumer legislation, because it didn't have a name for the longest time, had been the MORE Act, but I think once Ron Wyden joined in with Cory Booker and Chuck Schumer. They wanted to rename it. And so now it is, again, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. Let me just see this real quick. This marks the first time we've seen a coalition of Senate leaders publicly announce their intent to introduce and move legislation into the upper chamber that seeks to end federal cannabis criminalization. So yeah, we're seeing movement on the House version. As soon as we get the Senate version completed and to the Senate floor, we're expecting, hopefully, just as enthusiastic, let's call it, movement. And yeah, I will call it actually enthusiastic. Listening to some of those senators the other day, or some of those representatives the other day, I keep calling them all senators, was pretty inspiring. Some of them are really solid supporters. They've got a real solid understanding of the damage it's done to our communities and to our society as a whole. And they may not necessarily link it to the way I do, the injustice system. But hey, it was really inspiring. As well as, like I say, the ones that made me need my a little bit of heart medication, my blood pressure medication. There was also those that were definitely strong, valid supporters of moving this legislation forward, as far as COA goes, and as far as the MORE Act goes, and I do see it, hopefully, that strongly in the House, or in the Senate when the Senate version goes. So there's your link for that. Coming soon, Senate bill, and right to your senators. Any questions on those companion bills? Any comments or questions or thoughts? I think the only thing I'm going to stray on this one a little bit is one of the things I've heard a lot from folks is they talk about the tax rate that's being written into this, into COA, which I believe tops out at year 5 or year 6 at 25%. That's what they're saying, 25%. That is for the 20 million and first dollar. Before that, it's half of the amount. So the first year at 5, second year 10, third, it's 2.5, 5, 7.5, tops out at 12.5% for the small producer, the small grower. And again, this is where when they talk about things we need to do to support small growers, local growers, that kind of thing. I envision, and I'm hoping I'm accurate with some of this, I envision the legal marijuana market going very much the way the craft beer market went. There's just here in the Charleston area, excuse me, I readjust my butt. Right here in the Charleston area, I couldn't even count the number. I guess I could count if I took the time. The number of little breweries. There's even a couple of small distilleries here, but the number of little breweries in the community. Many of them with tap rooms, and they'll bring in food trucks to be in their parking lot and bring in some food service and stuff like that. Great places, and I don't know if I see it more in South Carolina than I saw it in Pennsylvania. Just because of the weather's always so much nicer, you can sit out more and they can have more, outdoor service type thing, or not. But I do know it's picking up in the Northeast as well, where I was originally from. But that's the way I see the cannabis market going in the future, is these small craft growers and producers, I would, I'm not far from a place called Low Tide Brewing. And I've been there a number of times representing Normal. The owners over there are supportive. I believe a couple of them, if not all of them, had lived in Colorado and moved before they moved here and started their business. So they are supporters. Myself, I'm not much of a drinker, and it's not necessarily I'm anti-alcohol. It's just my past few years, my body just and alcohol don't go well together. Um, and I keep saying, I even said to my doctor today, I really hope I get some of this resolved. I'd like to have a drink now and again. But no, and so where I'm at now is I'd love the opportunity to go to a little pub that had cannabis, and I could, where they have a number of varieties of their brew on tap, there'd be a nice variety of the home grows on there, or, that establishment grows on tap, on, how would you call that? It's not on tap, on sale anyway. And be able to sit there and partake a little bit at their bar and even try some here and there before you package up your what do they call the growlers, before you fill up your growler of weed. Oh, I just lost somebody there. They're rambling on. Oh, we got Shane, I think, is on a cell phone connection. Anyway, ramble on about that. So that was the one thing I do get mentioned about on this COA Act is the 25% tax rate. That is half that for the first $20 million. And that's actually the final rate after about 5 or 6 years.
I could add a little bit to that too, being a business owner. It's not like you're paying that 25% on top of the thing, that's a business expense. And in exchange for that, the company owners are going to be able to write off their business expenses, like, their actual building, labor, all kind of stuff like that off of their taxes. So it's kind of a wash, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's not necessarily saying the consumers are going to be taxed. They'll be taxed through production, indirectly, most probably. But some taxing does need to take place on this to support the expungement program funding and things like that, some of the other funding that's in there. At least that's the way it's been explained to me. All right, let's move on to, well, actually 2 other things. One other thing I'm going to hit first is the Federal Safe Banking Act. Let me go see if I have the right one here. And if you were following, I think a couple weeks ago, I may have talked about this briefly. And we talk about the Safe Banking Act actually quite often, a number of times. But let me share this link. A couple of weeks ago, and I don't see a date on this particular link, there was a hearing for NDAA, the come on, you gotta spell it out for me. National Defense something or another. It's a National Defense Appropriations Bill, funding bill, paying for our military and national defense. And the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, also known as the Safe Banking Act, which would allow state licensed marijuana related businesses to engage freely in relationships with banks and other institutions, has been attached to the House passed NDAA and now faces considerations by the US Senate. So when I say it was in the House passed National Defense Appropriations Act. I think that is what that is. And now it faces consideration in the state. I was talking to somebody about this a little bit earlier today, and they're like, well, you know, what's the big deal? What goes on? And in legal states, and again, I'm not in a legal state, so I only know this, you know, second, third hand information, but I think I've even seen the 60 Minutes or you know, report on it one night. You can't use the banks for your money, so you have to pay. And when you're paying your taxes, you know, these dispensaries and things like that, they have to hire armored cars to drive tens of thousands, maybe, I don't know if it hits hundreds of thousands, but I'm sure it's tens of thousands of dollars, you know, in these armored cars to deliver it to the government to pay pay taxes. They can't just, you know, write a check, wire transfer, all the other things that most businesses can do, interacting with banks. Interesting kind of story on that. When I founded Low Country Normal here in Charleston back in 2017, we need a bank account. You had to do anything, you kind of need a bank account. And I didn't need much more than just a checking account. And I thought I would just go to the local credit union that I'm already using and just, you know, see if I can open up an account. And they would not open an account for us. They hesitated, they hemmed and hawed a little bit. They sent us to their legal department, and through some questioning through their legal department, you know, I says, look, we're not dealing with cannabis, we're advocates. We're just exercising our First Amendment right to, you know, to voice our opinion on this item, redress our government. And at one point, the question was, well, would you accept a donation from a business that made their money selling marijuana? And I'm like, probably. It's a donation. I mean, I don't necessarily know where donations come from. But yeah, and at that point they went, no. All of a sudden it's drug money, and you're utilizing drug money. So you know, I mean, what was I supposed to say? No, we don't accept donations from. Now, mind you, I don't think we have any companies that sell illegal products or you know, legal in their state products that send us donations. At least not that I'm aware of. We have gotten a couple of stray donations here and there. But all of a sudden I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Where do I find another bank? And at that point, I think was in the news where Chase Bank was like making up fake accounts for people and that whole thing. And people were saying, just go to Chase. They give everybody and nobody accounts. But we ended up with somebody else, probably kind of similar to that. Anyway, we did finally get a bank account. But that's how ridiculous it gets. But actually, let me follow that up a little further. Because we're marijuana advocates and we advocate for this plant, the website that we use is a e-commerce site. And of course, to make an e-commerce site work, you need to interact with some financial institution. And this particular e-commerce site had their own processing, you know, credit card type processing thing. And we were able to connect other processors to that. And to make it easier for our supporters and stuff, I think we linked our PayPal account to it. And then one day I get notice from our Shopify that we're no longer welcome to use Shopify credit card processing because of our advocacy. I'm still not clear because we're not doing anything illegal as an organization. We're legally registered 501c4 nonprofit. real quick on that, 501c3s don't have as much political power or political, they're not as much allowed the political leeway that a 501c4 is. But the trade-off on that is your donations for a 501c3 are, you can write them off on your taxes. Your donations to a 501c4, good chance you can't write them off on your taxes. There's some exceptions, but most likely you can't write those donations off on your taxes because they're political. So yeah, supporting this plant is political, interestingly enough. Although, and I've said this to many of you all out there before, I get it told to me quite often, why is this political? All parties support it. It's not just across the aisle. It's, you know, even third parties, yeah, almost all parties. I can't say all, but almost all parties, you know, many parties. Backtracking just a little bit to the COA Act or to the MORE Act stuff. Oh, no, I'm sorry, to the COA Act, to the suggestions and comment period. There was SAM, which is Smart Approaches to Marijuana, which is basically an anti-marijuana group. Look up Smart Approaches to Marijuana or SAM. And they're against descheduling. They're against descheduling. So there's an example of an organization that, you know, isn't necessarily for it. So it is political in some respects. And it is, I hate to say it, although the voters pretty much all support at similar rates, the left a little bit more than the right. The legislators, it doesn't work out that same way. The left is more supportive. The right is more, let's keep prohibition going. A little bit different here in South Carolina with Tom Davis's bill, because he is a Republican senator, and it is actually moving forward. But my local senator, you know, had mentioned in those hearings that, yeah, she'd voted out of committee, but she'd vote against it on the Senate floor. So I still worry about this bill passing once it hits the Senate floor. Will it ever make it out of the Senate and over to the House? And the comment on the Herb Kirschman bill on the House side was, we're waiting to see what happens with Tom Davis's bill. But anyway, that's a little sidetrack from what we were talking about on the Safe Banking Act. So that's now been attached to the NDNA, and we are just waiting to see what that now, again, faces consideration by the Senate. So it was a pretty exciting couple of weeks recently. Things are kind of moving forward, and we're still waiting to hear what happens with COA when that hits the ground. Last thing I did want to touch base on, where are we time-wise, folks? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm rambling tonight. No different than every other night. The Anti-Doping Committee. Oh, I finally see what NDAA is, National Defense Authorization Act, which is an appropriation act to fund the Defense Department. Anti-doping, the World Anti-Doping Agency is looking to reevaluate their ban on finding marijuana in your system after the, oh gosh, I forget her name now. Anyway, after that last incident, we all know that the one competitor was not allowed to compete because they found marijuana in their system. Although our understanding was she consumed legally, it was legal in her state. Mother passed away. Heartstrings kind of stories, but good news on it. And you know, she was very gracious about it. I must say, she's a champ. But the World Anti-Doping Agency, WANDA, and I think the other one is UANDA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency, will be reevaluating that. So that could be very positive. Yeah, I love sharing memes about athletes and medal winners that are cannabis consumers. Excuse me. And I did not know a whole lot. I must admit to all of you, I didn't know a whole lot about CBD before I moved to Charleston, before I moved to South Carolina. Wasn't anything that kind of crossed my radar, but the numbers of athletes that are using cannabis for after workout recoveries is just very positive. And that's what I hear a lot of them are using it. The high of marijuana is somebody, I guess runners are relating their runner's high to a marijuana high. Just the endorphins kind of going on, stuff like that. But it definitely helps the body recover. As all of us know, cannabinoids help the homeostasis of the body. Our endocannabinoid system helps to regulate our other bodily systems and help create a balance, a homeostasis in those systems. And so it would make sense that cannabis could absolutely be beneficial after your workouts, after your runs, after your activities to help rejuvenate and refresh. All right. Anti-doping agency. That was the last on my list that I wanted to cover tonight, folks. I will kind of ask one more time if anybody has anything they'd like to add, toss out there, let me know. Otherwise, I'm seeing we're rolling up on 7:56. I even gonna miss Final Jeopardy tonight. Oh boy, how disappointing. Anyway, I'm not seeing any mics turn off, so what I'm going to do is wrap it up for the evening. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to having you back here next Wednesday. Oh, last thing before I go, there are elections coming up in November 2nd. They are local elections. Watch your local elections. They're probably city council, town council elections. Reach out to your candidates if you feel so inclined and ask them what their position would be, what their inclination would be on sponsoring and or supporting decriminalization ordinances in their community, in your community. Let me know what they say. Get back to me. We'll see what we can do. I have a couple that I'm working on here right now, and also somebody we've connected up in Myrtle Beach. That's my hope for us to, here in South Carolina, is move some decriminalization forward at the municipal level, and maybe enough of us do that, the state legislators will hear us. All right, that was my last sidetrack for the night. Thank you again for joining me for the South Carolina Cannabis Conversation. We are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m., barring technical difficulties. Don't forget to find us on social media, Facebook and Instagram, as long as they're out there and still connected. Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget, visit us at scnormal.org. And you can contact us through our contact page there if you'd like to reach out. That's it for me. Again, I'm Scott Weldon with South Carolina NORML. We will see you back here again next Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Good night, y'all.